I am Erin Cardoni. I'm the founder of Legendary Ecom Growth Partners, and we're an agency here in Vancouver, BC that helps supplements businesses grow profitably with digital marketing. But I'm here today with Lindsay O'Donnell from PQ Consulting, and we're going to talk about something completely different today that I'm super excited to learn about and teach you all about as well through her. Lindsay is an intuitive coach, and she is going to tell us what that means today and how that might actually help owners and founders unlock more potential in their own businesses. So Lindsay, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about your coaching style?
Yes, thank you, Erin. And this is my bad, but I'm actually rebranding to Lindsay O'Donnell Coaching. So if you go to PQ Consulting, it'll still redirect you. So hopefully by the time this comes out, but yeah, so it's like two worlds came together for me. So I used to own a marketing agency, more digital marketing for CPG, but for fun, I would get pictures of strangers and I would just answer questions. So my friends would send me pictures of their friends and their family members, and they'd be like, what do you see? You can call it psychic, not really psychic. It's more intuitive. Like, I see this happening. I feel this energy around you. And that was for fun. And then for my own reasons, I decided to shut down the agency. But while I was wrapping it up, I was doing marketing coaching, and I was training to be an intuitive coach for fun. And I just couldn't not bring those worlds together. So people would say things like, I just can't seem to get my brand to grow. And I'd be like, well, I can see that actually you've got this thing and you got it from your dad, and now you're doing this over and over and over, and you're kind of sabotaging yourself. And so the last thing I'll say is the difference between what I was doing, which was a reading, versus intuitive coaching. The reading is very much like yes or no, this is what I see. And intuitive coaching is us pulling the thread together. So the example I always give is I had a woman ask if she was going to get a divorce in an intuitive session. And in a reading, the answer would have been no. But in coaching, I knew that wasn't the question. And her mom kept popping in, and I was like, what's going on with your mom? And she said, she immediately started to cry. And she was like, my mom always made us feel like we're on the edge of scarcity. We were about to lose the house. Always made us feel like we were just on the edge of destitution. And I said, okay, well, you always feel like the rug's going to get pulled out from under you. And I think that you're actually sabotaging your relationships because of it. You might manifest a divorce if this isn't healed. So now I am an intuitive coach for founders and anyone highly ambitious, really. But they come to me generally with business problems or patterns that they see or blocks that they feel. And I'm able to see and feel things that you simply can't see on your own. That's my bio.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very cool. And so you and I have done a session together as well, not too long ago. And I thought it was totally different than what I was expecting, for one thing, but also really interesting because it was really what you were talking about digging into those past patterns and habits that we kind of create for ourselves, and not just identifying those as kind of the first step and realizing that those exist and how they manifest today, but how that's affecting us in our business lives. So yeah, I was really grateful for that session and thought it was really neat. And so can you tell me a little bit about, tell me who your intuitive coaching is right for, but also who do you think it's not right for?
Well, I feel like everyone should have it. I feel like it's for everybody. But I hear you. So the people that we are all married to our stories. They serve us, whether we see ourselves as the victim or as the hero, we are all married to them. Even when we say I gain nothing from having no money, there is something subconscious that you're benefiting from. So sometimes I've had people that are so deeply married to their stories, they don't realize it. So I had one person who I kept saying I keep seeing this and I keep seeing you growing this way. And it was like, no, I can't. I've tried that. No. And I was like, you are so married to your victimhood, you can't even see it. And there can be a variety of reasons, whether you, that's your identity. For me, I was married to my own victimhood, because if I realized that I was the source of all my own problems, then I was going to be really mad at myself. It was easier to be like, all these things happen to me, rather than hey, these are patterns that I've been participating in. So generally, I'd say the people that are my target audience are the people that aren't super married to their stories. And they're often the people that see the blurred lines between self-help, mental wellness, and their ambition. They're like the Jack Dorseys who are getting up and meditating before they go to work. They're the people reading Tony Robbins. It's not the people who are I need strategy, not intuition. They're just generally not in a place where they're open to it or they want that.
Got it. Okay. So what are some other maybe signs that somebody might really unlock some potential with intuitive coaching. You mentioned you might be doing meditation, you might be reading certain books. Are there other types of behaviors or interests that you think might kind of click that light bulb on for certain people?
Yeah. So I think that there's a few ways. And like you said, one of them is like you're interested in certain things. Like if you're already like reading books on intuition, if you're listening to this podcast and you're intrigued, then like this is for you. But oftentimes people are also get to a breaking point. They're like, this isn't working. And it could be like me, where I was like, I'm at this certain age, I'm not making the money I want, and my life isn't where I want it to be. And like dating is a disaster. Something has to change. Like that's why I went to my first intuitive coach. And side note, like I had been going to therapy and I was like, I need someone to tell me what's actually wrong. I don't need someone to be like, that's so tough, you know? And my intuitive coach within like the first 10 minutes was like, well, you're hyper dating because this happened when you were a child and now you're doing this over and over and over. And I was like, oh my God. So, you know, it's either like you're really interested in these things or you reach a point where you're just like, I don't feel safe in my body. I'm stressed. I keep having this experience. People keep cheating on me. My businesses keep failing. You reach a point where you're like, I'm completely open because I will do anything to like live the life I want. And just to add to it, I know you see it all the time. As a business owner and an agency owner, you see it all the time. How many times have you had a client where you're like, I gave you all the steps. Why aren't you doing them? Or I gave you all the assets. Why is this just not working? You know, you're like, I'm doing everything right. I'm giving you all the tools. Everything should be clicking and it's just not. And I will say one final thing is like, you cannot do this yourself. My mentor says that your shadows are like a rear view mirror, like above your head. Like I'm like deep in this work. And I will still talk to my intuitive friends and they'll point something out to me. And I'm like, oh my God, I would have never figured that out. So you really do need a mirror because you're just so close to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some indications of like, you are ready to come see me.
Nice. Oh, that's really cool. I think I've had this saying for quite a while because I used to do a lot of copywriting and bio writing for folks. And I used to be a journalist. So I'm kind of deep into that world in my own kind of like career history. And a saying that I always have is that it's almost it's almost impossible to write your own bio, but you can write anybody else's bio. It's so much easier. And I think that's exactly what you're saying of like, it's really hard to identify those patterns in yourself. It's really much easier to have somebody unlock those for you.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. So you gave us a story earlier about one example of a woman who was afraid she was going to get a divorce. Do you have any other examples of kind of success stories of people? Tell us why they came to you and what maybe you were able to unlock with them. And then if you know what they were able to kind of achieve out of that after, I would love to hear a couple of those.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a few if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So sometimes you intuitively immediately know what the problem is. You can see it immediately, but you can't tell that person to like right away because you have to pull the thread. And I'll give an example in the sense if you just told them right away, they would get defensive. They won't believe you. So I had a guy who was a life coach. And let me tell you, the enthusiasm was like subglacier. Like it was like, he was just like, no, I really like to change lives. And I was like, can you not see how maybe like people aren't signing with you, you know? But I knew he wouldn't, like if I just said that to him, he was convinced it was a funnel, it was a copywriting thing. And so I spent almost the full hour with him, just like trying to find out where his joy was, like in anything. And I realized that together we realized that he was not allowed to have emotions unless he played sports as a kid. So it was like, everything was like completely muted. And finally, at the end of the call, I just kept pushing him. And I was like, okay, if you lived in a communist country and you got paid the same no matter what would you do? And this person who like had shown no emotion was like, I'd be a stand-up comedian. And I was like, this is the problem. You hate being a life coach. I was like, that's the problem. The problem isn't your funnel, your strategy. It's the energy. You hate it. And I just said, like, if you're not going to make any money being a life coach, go make some money doing something else you hate and become a stand-up comedian. And he messaged me 2 weeks later and he's like, I just had my first stand-up. And it was like a different energy. Like, I'm not going to say that he was like bubbly and giggly by the end of the session, but he was a different person. And sometimes it's like, it's not just about the permission and someone seeing you. It's like going on that journey together where you finally get there and you're like, see, this is why all the pieces behind you aren't fitting together. And so that was one. Another one was that I had a guy whose businesses were always He was always building businesses, or businesses were always failing. Like it was always like a urgent situation. Like I all hands on deck because I'm building a business, all hands on deck because this business is failing. And I think he was on like business 3 or 4. And what we discovered together was that he had a deep, deep fear of intimacy. And so he was creating fires, and maybe not like, obviously, like he wasn't like laundering money, but you know what I mean? Like if you're creating an urgent situation because you need it to be sort of like this like high intensity situation because you need to have an excuse not to like connect deeply with friends or romantic partners or with your family, you are going to create businesses that are always like tense and building on unsteady ground or failing. So that was the other one. And the third one I'm going to tell you is really wild.
Okay.
Might have told you this personally, just to show you like the different like range of like what people can come. Like sometimes it's not a big deal. It's like, this is the reason you're hyper controlling. This is the reason you always keep yourself busy. But sometimes I would say like a very small percentage of cases, it's actually past life stuff. And I might be losing some of your listeners here. But so I had this woman who, the minute I started doing a session, I was like, I'm sorry, but I just see you like in front of a fireplace and there's like a lot of blood. And I think you're giving birth. I don't know what it means, but I feel it's a past life. And I didn't really know what it meant. And so anyway, we just kind of moved on with coaching, but she was launching this big project and she kept getting like intense lower back pain. And I was like, it feels like labor, but not like labor. And I don't really know what it is. And we couldn't figure it out. And so I called up my friend who's like very, very psychic. And I just told her my client's name. I was like, this is her name. What are you getting on her? And she's like, oh, she died giving birth a few lifetimes ago. The baby died. She broke her tailbone. And now whenever she's about to birth something into the world, her body shuts down because it's not safe. And so we just did some like very, for some people, this is going to be very quote unquote woo-woo, but we did like, just like a past life meditation, and the back pain like pretty much went away. So whether you believe in past life stuff or not, the body does remember, and the body is always trying to keep you safe. And so if your body is reacting a certain way, it's because it feels threatened or unsafe. And so her leaving this like safe job to start a new project felt unsafe to birth something to the world. So those are like 3 very different examples of like how these sessions can go.
Wow, extremely different. That's like really good examples. That's super cool. So I was curious, so how long have you been doing this type of coaching?
Yeah. Okay. So I've been doing the readings and intuitive work for probably more than 10 years. My mom was super new age. So like when I was in my 20s, my mom went to Italy with her medium. And like, I've been going to tarot card readers. I've loved them for business because I just thought, true or not, it gives you something amazing to chew on. But then I trained to do the intuitive coaching, I guess about 2 years ago. And it was a year program with my mentor where I think there was like 20 of us. We did a couple of retreats. We had 2 meetings a week. And so she taught us all about shadow work and energy reading and all that kind of stuff.
Wow. Yeah, nice. Okay, cool. One thing that was coming up for me while you were talking about maybe a couple of the examples that you gave is the link between somebody's personal life and their lived and past experience and those shadows that they carry with them, and how that translates into how they behave and operate their businesses, and how they view their business and the opportunities and their kind of like future potential. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that link between your childhood, your personal life, and then your business? How do those things work together?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And I know that you and anyone else who has had clients know this, where like on the most surface level, if you deal with somebody who's always stressed, that business is always like stressed. That business is always like turning in things late. It's a very tense experience. That is like the most simple example to showcase that like our businesses are simply a manifestation of our tendencies and our beliefs in the world, you know? So what if you don't feel safe in this world? And safe can be like I need to be included, otherwise I will end up on the street alone. So that is like the most basic example of like how your beliefs manifest into this thing that you create. But like you said, when it ties back to childhood, it almost always ties back to childhood. I would say 80% of the time, 20% of the time, it's past life. Is like the things that we can't see are a little bit more under the current. And so things that I see most often, which may not be obvious, is for a lot of people, particularly women, we don't allow ourselves to rest. You have to earn rest, or you can't rest, or it's not safe to rest. And that can come from a lot of different things. Like when you were a child, I had a friend who every time she sat down, her parents were like, what are you doing? Vacuum. So it's like her nervous system was like, I need to always be going. And then that manifests into your business. You're not always doing what's best for the business. You're not giving yourself space to like meditate, think, observe. You're just constantly going. For me, like I always had to be productive. And a lot of us women relate to being like raised in girl boss era, independence. I don't need a man. Money is independence. But like for me, that meant like I should never be resting. And if I did, it's because I worked really hard all day, not simply because I need rest and I'm human and I just rest and that's what it is. So those are like a couple of examples of like how it can be really obvious. Like I had a very traumatic childhood. I was always yelled at. Now I yell at my team versus like, I don't even realize I'm doing it, but I'm a perfectionist or I'm always busy or I can't rest. And so the business isn't being given space to actually like allow things to unfold. You're not allowing things to come to you. You're not seeing the full picture because you're keeping yourself busy. So those would be like two examples.
Are there any patterns like that, like what you mentioned about women, that you see are really common with men?
If your strengths aren't hyper masculine, there's a lot of shame. So I see a lot of men who are like, yeah, like I'm not like really intense. I'm not an intense leader. I'm not authoritative, but their strength is that people feel safe. They feel like they can speak. It's a warm environment. But oftentimes, because we live in a society that doesn't celebrate that, and to extent sometimes demonizes that as like womanly or weak, there's a lot of shame around that. And then they hold back from stepping into their greatness where they could be mentoring, they could be leading. There's a lot of stuff with men with both, but it's different. Men don't feel safe to be angry. I know that there's this whole, it's like known that like men don't feel like they can cry, but a lot of men are like, I don't want people to be afraid of me. So anger is something I can't touch. I wasn't allowed to be angry. I was always yelled at as a child, or it was considered unsafe. And so anger is simply energy. I actually think it's a gift. It's momentum. So it's like you go boxing and then you're like, I'm going to do this. Like, to me, anger is like activism. It's change. It's like a mother like being so done with something that she advocates for her child. But a lot of men like feel shame and guilt, and they don't feel safe experiencing the emotions that they naturally have. So I'd say like two big ones for men are like, if their strengths aren't hyper masculine, there's a lot of shame and confusion, and feeling a lot of shame and feeling completely disconnected from their emotions because it's not safe to have their full range of emotions.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, awesome. And so another question that came up for me is, well, okay, if you look at, traditional business coaching, right? We're going to look at, what are the strategies? What are the systems that are in place right now in your business specifically? Tell me about your team. What are the goals? And then we're going to create a plan to work towards those goals. That tends to be the traditional format. Your format is completely different. So can you talk to me about, about those differences and, are those two different formats supposed to go in tandem? Tell me what you think about that.
I love that, because I think what you're talking about is essentially male and female energy. And I feel like everyone's going to roll their eyes when I say this, but it's like, we all have male and female energy. Male energy is like, go, 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 hustle. And it gets to a part where it's harmful, where it's like, so capitalistic and like screw everybody else. And feminine is observing, receiving, being intuitive, being methodical, but the like extreme of that is never getting out of bed. So it's like we both need those tendencies. And I think what you're talking about is like, I think for so long, the structure and what was celebrated and acceptable was very masculine. It has to go a certain way, it has to fit a certain way, and like screw anything else. Where I think that like what I'm seeing, and you can disagree with me, but I think what I'm seeing too is there's a lot more like accepting of like different energies, different strengths, a little bit more of intuition and gut feeling and understanding this is a good fit, even if you feel like you can't verbalize it. And I know like that can vary for teams, whether it's like this is still super structured or it's still super free, but I think it's just understanding those different strengths. And I think when it comes to shadow work, are you implementing that structure because it's best for the company and best for your business, or because it makes you feel safe? Are you controlling because you don't feel like you can trust anyone? Are you controlling because you feel like you can't receive? Or is it something where your team collectively has been like, this is why we thrive? So to answer your question, I think that like there's been one way of like building a business that's been celebrated, and that's been the end of it. And I think that it's like a little bit more nuanced now, but I think just asking the question of like, however you're building this, are you building this because of your shadows, or are you building this because like you're completely open and you're allowing it to grow the way it needs to grow.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think what that brings up for me is, honestly, I think the world of business is so tied to that male energy, and it's really always been that way. All those kind of gurus that you see out there are really intense, in your face. I'm the expert. This is the way it's done, and it's very masculine energy, the way that you're calling it. But what you're talking about is finding a little bit more of a balance, and that acceptance of the female energy in business, and incorporating that into your business. Because I think what you're saying is, we can't really deny that those past experiences shape how we run our businesses. That affects us in our everyday life, including in our businesses as well. And so being able to bring those two sides together, that kind of masculine energy of building, ambition driven, I have goals, I'm going to get there, this is how I'm going to get there. But also there's also these patterns and these behaviors that I've learned over time that are affecting my ability to do that. And when we bring those two together, you're saying that's probably the ultimate unlock.
Totally. And I feel like, so maybe I have a question for you, is I'm sure you can see how everyone brings in their own shadows. Like some of your team members might need like constant reassurance. Some of your team members may see that as like threatening and controlling. Like I'm sure you've seen like, okay, understanding that like people bring their own stuff, but understanding like this is what they need and it's not an actual structure. I'm sure, well, I know being a business owner, it's much easier to see in other people where you're like, okay, like they need to like be celebrated, they need their hand held, and this person sees that as a threat.
Right. Yeah. And that comes up with in client work too, right? A lot of the contact people that we work with at the agency, we work directly with founders, but also kind of like higher level marketing managers, VPs of marketing, marketing directors, those kinds of roles as well. So leadership roles. And yes, in those client relationships, that type of stuff comes up really frequently, and why there's no kind of one size fits all for a client relationship with an agency, because everybody's needs and fears tend to be different. And so how you communicate with a client and how you deliver your service really has to change based on those various personalities. And honestly, if I'm honest with myself, I really haven't thought about that until this conversation. But it's 100% true. Of course, there's no, nobody's cookie cutter. It's not a cookie cutter way to do business. And that's because of our lived experiences.
Yeah. And I know that even though you haven't thought about it, you've done it intuitively.
Right.
Like you've naturally supported people in the way that they needed to be supported.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting. So if there's any one takeaway that you could say for a founder who might be considering this, or has maybe tried traditional business coaching, it all sounds good from the outset. Yes, I've got a plan in place. For sure, this is going to work. Finally, this time I found the way that is going to break me through that plateau that I've been facing, or whatever it is. And they just still can't get there. What should they know about intuitive coaching, and why should they be thinking about working with you potentially specifically?
Yeah. All I will say too is I have been there. I ran the agency and I like did everything right. I did the rebrands, I did the hiring, and like, yeah, I had some like very successful years. But I would say that like intuitive coaching doesn't replace anything. It's such it's, I want to say supplement. That's so funny. That's what you focus on. It's such an asset, and it's completely different. I would say like it's an exercise in getting to know yourself, which can only make you a stronger, more formidable presence. It's highlighting, I don't want to say weaknesses, but things that you can't see in anything that you're launching. So I have clients that see me every 2 weeks, and they'll be like, should I work with this manufacturer? Why is my mom being so awful? And when is this going to come through? So they're like leaning on some of the psychic stuff a little bit, but there is no, like the lines are completely blurred with who you are and how you approach things versus how you show up in the world. And in my experience, like it's never just been one strategy or one campaign that's like holding you back or going to be the breakthrough. So for me, it's like building a much stronger base and pillar for whatever you do. And why you should see me. Well, I think that like the reason I focused on founders and entrepreneurs is because I understand them. I've been there, so I can speak that language. So, I understand the stresses that come with like raising funds, with trying to make sales, with, being really stressed because it's like whatever you pay your team comes out of your personal bank. And so I say that if you are really willing to do anything to build the life that you want, and that means your business, whether it's freedom, financial freedom, if you are willing to do anything, then that should include this. And I always think like people that are so turned off by it, then like what are you afraid of? Are you really willing to do anything? And this isn't like, will you jump off the bridge? Are you willing to do anything? But it's like I was willing to do anything to build the life I wanted, including like getting uncomfortable in my own stuff. So, and I always tell people, even if you're like, I don't believe in any of this, you will leave with some like profound questions to chew on. You know, I used to go see psychics all the time, and I didn't always listen, but I always left with some like different perspectives and things to chew on. So yeah. And I offer free 20-minute sessions. So like you have no reason not to.
Nice. Well, I'll totally validate what you just said, because we did have a session together, and I did get a lot out of that session, just looking at my own past and my own behaviors and patterns that are in my life that I really didn't know a lot about intuitive coaching at all until we had that together. And yeah, I did get a lot out of it. So I can verify that that's true. And I do think that this would be an amazing unlock for any founders who are, you know, struggling with anything that they just need to kind of break past. This is such a cool way that's going to affect every aspect of your life in a positive way.
Yeah.
Not, right?
Okay. So I have a couple questions for you, not intuitive personal questions.
Okay.
But what are you seeing like as the most challenging, besides like, you know, budget, target audience, in terms of founders? Like, what do you think that people are most grappling with when it comes to like that balance of like wondering who they are, what they should be doing next? What do you think that like, what are you seeing as the most common challenge the founders are facing among your clients?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that I'm seeing a lot of founders who are struggling with, let me think about this for 1 second. Struggling with how to, like, okay, so in the environment where we're working, I mean, in supplements specifically, it's super competitive, and there's a lot of kind of copycatting happening right now, and it's competitive. You're competing for market share in a really saturated environment, and so I think founders are really struggling with, well, I feel like I've created something unique and special. Why isn't this taking off the way that I envisioned it would, right?
Yeah.
So yes, you get to a certain point, things look like they're working, you know, you've got a secret sauce that's played out or panned out really well for you. And then you get to this point where it's like, wait a second, how can we not get to that next level? I know that this is going to work. I've got the proof of concept, but why are we not getting there? And they can't figure out how to get past that point. And I think there are all kinds of reasons why that happens. Most likely, you would probably know better than me, but there's definitely personal aspects that will hold founders back. And a lot of the time, I think that comes back to, it could be fear of trying new things for whatever reason, fear of losing your control over the brand or that trajectory that you had in mind for yourself, and just the uncertainty or maybe a potential feeling of like unsafeness around experimenting with new thoughts or ideas that might unlock opportunities to bring your brand to where you know it should be.
That's such a good point, because, you know, a lot of things that we don't dig into is fear of success. Because if you, I'm sure, like if I asked you, or if you had asked me when I was running my agency, like, are you afraid of being successful? I was like, no, there's not one part of me that doesn't want $1 million. Like what? But then it's like, part of this energy work, and I'm sure you've done this, is where you dig deep. And I had to dig deep, and I was like, well, I just assumed once I made a certain amount of money, I was going to get sued. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, well, yeah, like once you'll get sued. And I know that was like, I would hold myself back in weird ways. Or I thought banks were evil because I'm like an OG Greenpeace activist, you know, but how can you think banks are, how can you expect to receive money when you think the main conduit to money is evil? So there are like these like different things which people don't realize. And that's like one of the easiest things that you can dig into is like, write down everything you think comes with success. And a lot of people will say things like, oh, well, like I'll have to support my family, or I'll be different. People will think I'm different. And it's like really in the subconscious. So if you have those thoughts, and we all do, around money, and they're there, they are subtly holding you back. And like you said, like that could turn up as like not taking a risk, not trusting yourself. So I'm really glad that you brought up that point, because the stuff around success and money, so few of us actually dig really deep into, or even realize that it's there.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So if this resonated with people who are watching this, You mentioned that you're switching from PQ Consulting to Lindsay O'Donnell Consulting. Is that right? So how should they get in touch with you?
Yes, so it's going to be lindsayodonnell.ca. My Instagram will never change. It's intuitive.lindsay, and the link in the bio will always lead to my freebies, the free 20-minute session if you want to book. I'm starting to do freebies once a month. So like the first one will be a workshop on overgiving. So I would say like either find me on LinkedIn, Lindsay K. O'Donnell, or Instagram, intuitive.lindsay, and that will link to whatever website is live, and it will link to all my offers.
Sounds great. We'll put all of those links in the show notes or the description for this video so that people can easily find them there, okay?
Amazing.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. I think that's it for today. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Erin.